Do you believe solitude is weakness? What if I told you that it is precisely when you disappear, stay silent, and withdraw that you become more dangerous than ever? In this video, you will discover how the invisible man builds empires in silence, and why the solitary dominate the game when no one is watching. 3 Machiavellian secrets. Brutal, silent, irrefutable. You are not weak. You are silent. And it is in this silence that the strength is born. The strength the world fears but cannot understand. While others live in desperate pursuit of attention, you disappear. While they chase applause, you learn to wait. And that is where domination begins. When no one notices you, no one can stop you. This video is not about self-esteem, nor about winning stupid arguments. It is about self-mastery, silent supremacy, and psychological warfare. You will understand why Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for men like you, invisible, exiled, and too dangerous to fit in. It does not matter where you are. What matters is who you are becoming. And if you have come this far, perhaps you already know. The world underestimates those who walk alone but fears when they return unrecognizable. Get ready. The transformation begins now. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe now to the channel. Chapter 1. The silence that cuts like a blade. They think silence is absence, that the silent man is lost, weak, or confused. But what they do not know is that silence is a sharp blade, sheathed in the soul of those who have learned to endure their own echo. While everyone talks, opines, shouts to be seen, the man who stays silent is sharpening his invisible weapon, self-control. Silence is not emptiness, it is calculation. It is the art of observing without being noticed, of hearing what others reveal between the lines while they believe they control the conversation. The silent man is never distracted. He is present, whole, lethal, like the serpent coiled around its prey, waiting. There is a type of power that does not need to announce itself. It is felt. The man who masters silence has learned to speak with presence, with the gaze, with absence. And this absence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Because he who withdraws destabilizes, he who is silent confuses, and he who observes controls. Silence is the territory where the enemy reveals himself. Because those who need noise to exist give everything away by not enduring the void. In the absence of applause, they fall apart. But the solitary man, the strategist, he strengthens himself in that void. He listens to more than words. He listens to hidden fears, insecurities disguised as bravado, desires hidden behind gestures. And the more he sees, the more power he has. Machiavelli knew real power is not in display, but in mastery of appearances. He who talks too much betrays himself. He who argues excessively is trying to convince himself. But the man who is silent already knows who he is. He is not trying to be heard. He's waiting for the right moment to strike, without warning, hesitation, or mercy. Like a hidden blade in its sheath, cutting with millimetric precision. Silence is also a test. When you're silent, the world reveals how much it depends on your attention to feel alive. You become a black mirror, and the other despairs because he does not see himself reflected in you. That is true dominion, not when you dominate by force, but when your absence is already a threatening presence. When your peace annoys, when your silent gaze is deeper than a war cry. Therefore, the man who wishes to conquer total dominion must cultivate silence as a sacred weapon, not the silence of fear, but the silence of presence, the silence of a sharp mind. He does not respond to provocations, does not seek validation, does not hurry to be accepted. He understands that all external noise is disguised internal noise, and only the weak fear the void. True power lies in those who can endure being with themselves, because that is the man no one can manipulate. Chapter 2. The presence that threatens. The presence of a man who does not need to prove anything is a silent threat. He enters a room and the air changes density. People cannot explain it, they just feel it. It is not arrogance, it is not exhibitionism. It is something darker, absolute self-mastery. This kind of presence is not built with words, nor with status. It is born from internal control, invisible discipline, pain that has been transmuted into power. While everyone struggles to be noticed, this man imposes respect simply by existing in silence. True presence is born in the absence of need for approval. When a man has faced himself, has lost everything, and remains standing, he no longer needs validation from others. And that intimidates deeply, because the weak recognize, even unconsciously, that he is immune. That there is no emotional blackmail that works, no manipulation that can break him. Such a man carries in his gaze the warning, "I have been to hell, and I came out laughing." This alone is a declaration of war against the fragile. Most people build their presence with masks, displaying what they are not. But the solitary man builds his with absence. Absence of noise, need, fear. His energy seeks nothing, and it is precisely because of this that everything begins to gravitate around him. He does not offer himself. He does not sell himself. He imposes himself as a hidden force, as if saying, "Accept me or fear me, but never try to dominate me." There is something predatory in the silence of a man who knows himself. Not in a destructive sense, but in an archetypal sense. The wolf that watches the forest silently, waiting for the right moment. Society fears this kind of man because he represents the end of illusions. He does not play social games, he sees them from outside. And when he decides to act, he does so with surgical precision. He does not attack in groups. He dismantles entire systems with a single gesture. This presence is built in exile, in the emotional desert, in the darkness of the soul where few dare to enter. The ordinary man flees solitude because it reveals the void. The rare man faces it and transforms himself. He returns from the shadows as an unshakable entity, and his mere presence destabilizes those still trapped by noise and distraction. He becomes the mirror in which others see what they lack, and for that reason, either admire or hate him. And Machiavelli already warned, the prince who desires absolute power must learn to be feared without cruelty, respected without explanations. This is only possible when his own existence becomes a constant reminder of contained strength. The threatening presence does not need to raise its voice. The silence that precedes the storm is enough. A look that says, "I know who I am, and I know what I am capable of." The doubt that this generates in others is enough to paralyze them. Real presence is not forced charisma nor superficial charm. It is the result of a war fought inside oneself. Each internal scar, each loss, each humiliation was absorbed and transmuted into silent power. He does not seek peace with others because he has already made peace with his own demons. And that makes him a living ghost among the living, a shadow that carries power without needing to show it. In the end, the solitary man becomes what the world cannot understand, a walking paradox. He does not speak, but he dominates. He does not impose, but he leads. He does not seek, but he attracts. He's a king without a throne, a general without an army, a god among men. His presence is a reminder that true power does not make noise. It simply exists. Chapter 3. The contempt that humiliates the world. There is a kind of contempt that does not shout, does not point, does not accuse. It simply ignores. And it is in this cold silence, this surgical indifference, that the other soul begins to implode. Contempt is the weapon of those who no longer need to prove anything. It is the final blow of those who have already won in advance. When a man chooses contempt, He tells the world, "You are not even worth the effort of my anger." And the world breaks. Because what most despairs the modern ego is not hate. It is being treated as invisible. Machiavelli knew contempt was one of the most powerful tools of power. Because contempt, unlike aggression, does not give the enemy the comfort of a response. It does not offer a stage, does not give a scene. It dries the opponent's soul by absence. It is the poison without smell, but it slowly corrodes the other's pride structure. When the solitary applies contempt, he does not just walk away. He erases the other's name from his own universe. Contempt is not arrogance. It is strategy. And that is why men who master themselves become masters of this art. They understand that reacting is losing energy, that explaining is going down a level, that justifying is begging for validation. Contempt is the response of those who have already won inside. It is the absence that screams, the silence that echoes like a sentence, the emotional distance that suffocates more than any speech. When you show contempt, you are saying, "I do not need you. I do not envy you. I do not fear you. You are irrelevant." And this message, even without words, hurts deeper than any insult could, because humans cannot stand not being noticed. The ego needs to be validated, loved, hated, feared. But ignored, that is a silent humiliation. It is putting the other soul in a dark cell without mirrors. The solitary man, by mastering contempt, becomes an absent presence that haunts. He is physically distant, but mentally present in the minds of all who underestimated him. He appears in the form of absence, in the form of indifference. He becomes the ghost that haunts those who tried to control, use, or diminish him. Because nothing generates more guilt than being ignored by someone you expected to beg for your attention. Contempt is also a filter. It shows who really deserves your energy. Those who react with fury to your silence were the same ones planning to use you. Those who leave you alone when you walk away are the few who perhaps deserve to stay. And those who tried to destroy you after you stopped giving attention are the weak who always depended on your light to survive. Contempt reveals. It separates ghosts from warriors, flatterers from allies. And that is why contempt is a sacred ritual on the solitary man's journey, not as revenge, but as purification. Every person ignored is a burden you leave behind. Every conversation you do not answer is proof that you no longer need to be accepted. Every presence you avoid is a victory over the addiction to approval. Contempt is not about the other. It is about your freedom to no longer care. You do not need to hate. You do not need to confront. You only need to let the world feel your absence. Let the silence fill the spaces where once there was effort, drama, anxiety. Contempt is the end of the theater. And when the stage is empty, the false characters go mad. Because contempt, my friend, is the purest form of power. Not because it hurts, but because it shows you no longer need anyone to be whole. Chapter 4. The relentless logic of solitude. Solitude is not a curse. It is an equation, an exact formula, calculated in the shadows, that transforms chaos into order, weakness into strategy, noise into precision. The solitary man is not driven by emotion. He calculates. He observes. He understands that absence is more powerful than presence because it creates doubt, mystery, and fear. In a world where everyone shouts, strategic silence becomes an act of war. It is not about being alone. It is about using solitude as a logical structure, where each step is thought out like on a chessboard, cold, calculated, merciless. Noise is irrational. The crowd acts on impulse. But the man who inhabits the desert, the psychological desert of seclusion, is forced to think. Without applause, without validation, without external voices, he begins to hear only himself. And when this silence prolongs, it reveals a brutal detail. The world outside is fragile, and it was the noise that always deceived you, distracting you from the truth. Solitude cuts illusions, exposes the collective's lies, and shows that clarity is only born in the void. There is no logic where there is neediness. There is no strategy where there is necessity. The solitary man, having nothing to lose, can plan everything. Machiavelli already taught, the prince must know how to pretend, hide, adapt, but above all, he must see the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. And this vision is only born in solitude. The logic of solitude is cruel because it destroys sentimentality. You stop waiting for others to save you, love you, or understand you. You save yourself. You understand yourself. And when this happens, you no longer belong to the previous world. You operate on another level, on another frequency. Such a man becomes dangerous because he depends on no one, and he who depends on nothing can conquer everything. The relentless logic of solitude also kills the childish ego. That part of you that sought approval, feared rejection, wanted to be seen. All of that dies, and in its place is born something monstrously serene, the objective mind, strategic thinking, the absence of illusion. When you walk alone long enough, you understand that the love of the world is conditional. It comes with demands, labels, expectations. But when you give up trying to please, you begin to conquer. Solitude gives you the greatest power, the freedom to need to convince no one. This new man, rebuilt by the cold logic of solitude, no longer reacts. He anticipates. He does not despair. He waits. He does not show off. He withdraws. Every decision he makes is a stone he moves with millimetric precision, and the others, unknowingly, are playing his game. That is why the solitary dominate, because while others act on desire, they act on calculation. And while everyone lives in the immediacy of emotion, the solitary lives in the long term of inevitable victory. But there is a cost. There always is. The logic of solitude demands a high price. The death of the common man. When you start thinking this way, you distance yourself. Bonds break. Trivial conversations lose meaning. Parties sound ridiculous. People seem childish. It is as if you woke from a trance and now walk through a world where everyone is still asleep. This hurts, but it is necessary, because there is no dominion without exile. And there is no power without separation. In the end, the man who embraces the relentless logic of solitude becomes a kind of invisible architect. He designs his ascent in the dark, without noise, without witnesses. And when he finally appears, the world thinks it was luck, coincidence, or miracle. But it was not. It was calculation, coldness, consistency, solitude, and most importantly, it was the absolute abandonment of the need to be understood. Because he who demands understanding gives away power, but he who is enough for himself rises above all. You do not need to be understood. You need to be feared. And for that, you must think like a ghost, present everywhere, visible nowhere. The man who dominates through the logic of solitude is the one who disappears and returns with the world in his hands. You began this video as a solitary man, perhaps even lost, perhaps silent not by choice, but by rejection. But now you understand. Solitude is not a sentence, it is a call. A call to dominion, to transformation, to a silent war against everything that tries to keep you weak, distracted, and domesticated. The 3 secrets you discovered today are not magic formulas. They are weapons, sharp, invisible, and lethal. Weapons that can only be wielded by those who had the courage to be alone, to be silent, to disappear, and to rebuild themselves, stone by stone, scar by scar. You no longer need to beg for acceptance, approval, or company. The world chases distraction because it fears itself. But you now have learned to inhabit your own void. to find in silence what others will never find in noise. Power. Those who talk too much sell themselves. Those who expose themselves too much betray themselves. But those who master themselves are the only ones who can master others. That is the secret the weak will never understand. And for that very reason, you are already ahead of most. Continue. Disappear if necessary. Train. Observe. Think. Cut ties that drain you. Silence what distracts you. You do not need to be seen to win. You need to be feared when you return. Let your absence be felt as a curse, and your return as a storm. When the world finally realizes what you have become, it will be too late. They will laugh at your solitude until it destroys them. Now listen carefully. If this video spoke to you, it is because you are already awakening to who you really are. Subscribe to the channel. Here, you will never be fed sweet lies but armed with bitter truths that liberate. Because the path of the strong man is dark, solitary, but glorious. And you have just taken the first step. Welcome to the silent war. Some think this is the end. But be careful. The war is not over yet. There are still things left unsaid. These 2 videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos beside you and start breaking that mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?